Namaste, everyone. Namaste, Patrick. Namaste, Shakti ji. Thank you so much for
Namaste.
accepting our invite and being here in this Youth Ki Baat e-dialogue. Thank you to all our viewers who are joining in today and to all the young people from across the country and around the globe who are watching this live with us on this special dialogue that we have with Mr. Patrick Brauckmann and Shri Shakti Sinha ji. Today's dialogue happens to be revolving around something on learning on Hinduism's general practices, on sustainable lifestyle, and how India has been emerging globally. To share with all of you, Mr. Patrick Brauckmann is an entrepreneur and investor based on the west coast of Canada. His business life has taken him across the world, including many parts of India. From an early age, he was exploring the nature of consciousness, yoga, Ayurveda, and when he's not playing with the role of father of four children, he's either working on a new project or touring temples or the odd cave in India. His personal life is focused on advancing animal rights causes around the world while not working at his hobby farm. As a Hindu and urban yogi, he strongly proclaims himself as he's working the balance between a dharmic lifestyle while remaining actively engaged in the world. For 2 decades, Mr. Patrick has identified, structured, and financed numerous private and public companies in wide spectrum of industry sectors, including healthcare, internet, telephony, solar energy, oil and gas, mineral exploration, and licensed productions in the US and Canadian cannabis markets. He has received his BA honors from Simon Fraser University and has served in both management and broad and board capacities within the international capital market scene with transcendental value in the hundreds of millions in the past decade. Again, Patrick is an urban yogi, and when not hanging out in the cave or temple in India, he's engaged as a father, entrepreneur, and investor. Another speaker happens to be a very known personality among the young people in India and has inspired a lot of young people across the globe as well. Shri Shakti Sinha ji is the director of Atal Bihari Vajpayee Institute of Policy Research and International Studies, MS University, Vadodara. He is Distinguished Fellow at India Foundation. Shri Sinha was the former director of Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, which a lot of us had the blessings and the opportunity to benefit a lot of it to or maybe organize events or from the library, the vast library and the books that it has. He has a master's in public policy from George Mason University, along with a master's in Indian and Chinese history from Delhi University. Shri Shakti was a member of India's higher civil services, the Indian Administrative Service, from 1979 to 2013. He has held positions in various capacities at the federal, provincial, and local levels, including as a private secretary to the former Prime Minister of India, Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, Finance Secretary in Delhi Provincial Government, and as Chief Secretary of the Andaman Government, among others. Internationally, he has headed the United Nations Governance and Development Team in Afghanistan from the year 2006 to 2009, coordinating donor support to the Afghan government and was earlier as a senior advisor to the executive director on the World Bank board. Shri Sinha ji has written many book chapters, working papers, briefs, columns, etc. on the political economy of India, Indian foreign policy and strategic affairs, Chinese economy and politics, and on Afghanistan for global and Indian publications. We welcome both of you and thank you so much for accepting our invite. Thank you.
Thank you. Very exciting to be with you.
Thank you. As we move ahead with this crucial dialogue that we're having today, today is a day that the entire country is celebrating. I think not just country, but the world as well, as BBC today had shared from coming from Ghana on the Ganesh Chaturthi. And Ganesh Chaturthi in itself reflects a lot of things that we would also learn from Patrick in his course of dialogue and then in future. But something which I feel as an individual myself, working at the international space and taking products of the local and taking it to global, our culture has taught us something which this entire crisis has also brought us in the picture. That is, swasmai swalpam samajaya sarvasvam. A little bit for oneself and everything for the society. And this is exactly how the culture and the traditions talk about today. Further, we have been advocating about Loka Samasta Sukhinyo Bhavantu. Let the entire world be happy and peace be among the universe. And such cultural diversities, when coming from a country and a nation like India, And that is how, when now in the entire world, we are celebrating as the International Yoga Day, or through starting an alliance on the solar, through the International Solar Alliance, or maybe going Atmanirbharta, for being vocal for local and then taking it global. And this is something that how the cultural values, that strong cultural values that we come from, and sustainable practices that we have had, that has made us stronger to go global. And as now India has been emerging globally. So not taking much of your time, I would request Mr. Patrick to kindly share his thoughts and enlighten the young people of India today with your words, please. Mr. Patrick, over to you.
Well, I actually enjoy listening to you, so anytime that you want to interrupt, please do so. You're a great speaker, and I've been watching your channel, and this is, I think, one of the things that seems to be emerging from India is there's a reawakening of a culture that was the most prominent culture on the planet for millennium. And over the last 200 or 300 years, it's had a cloud over it. And since independence 70 years ago, it hasn't really had the leadership that was based in the original culture that created Bharat, India. And that's my feeling. And so I happen to be very supportive of what Prime Minister Modi is doing, both on a cultural level and as a leader, I haven't seen anyone on the world stage demonstrate the diplomacy skills that he has in bringing together other nations that were at loggerheads with India for the longest time. I think there's that cloud that's been over India has blinded its people and especially the youth of the greatness of India. Prior to colonization, if you read, Dr. Subhash Kak, he'll, relate these amazing statistics that India represented 20 to 25% of the world's economy. I mean, it was the center of the universe for the longest time. When Christopher Columbus was traveling to America or looking for India, he bumped into America. His journals on board the ship noted gold, I think 15 times when he was looking for India. So, I mean, India was the center of the universe for the longest time. And it wasn't just because, of great Bollywood films or, the Indian people. It was the Dharmic culture. Sanatana Dharma is an eternal truth. It's a natural based truth. It doesn't come from a stone, from a guy in the clouds. These are, well thought out and reasoned premises that, the rishis, have given us. And so, with that in mind, I see that the resurgence and the narrative around Hindu culture as being one of the great salvations for the people of India. On a daily basis, what we want to be doing is thinking about strategies to put a smile on our face, to put a buck, in the bank, and to put some, food in the fridge. And I've found from an early age that the secrets of the rishis are really very simple. Doesn't require a gym membership, and with your channel and all of the great teachers that you can find online now, these secrets and truths are easily accessible. And so, we can talk more, during the next few minutes about strategies, but my morning starts out, with a morning bath and ritual and pranayama and some yoga asana movements. And I've been learning mantras for quite a while, and I have teachers both in India and in America that teach me those, and you can find them online. It's it's very accessible. So that's my little story. I lead an active life. My heart is always there. either in a temple in the south or, in the foothills of the Himalayas north of Rishikesh. I can go in, a lot more detail about my stories in India, but I think that, the message is restoring the promise and the vision that ancient India gave to the world, and getting in touch with those very simple natural truths are great strategies to live in the here and now.
Right. Thank you so much, Patrick, for sharing your thoughts on the introductory thoughts on such a crucial dialogue that we have. I think you have really pointed us on the 3 R's: reawakening, resurgence, and restoring. And that is exactly, I think it is very essential as we move ahead. Though we have some more time to listen to your stories, um, and or maybe you would want to come back later, we could have Shakti share his thoughts then.
So thank you very much, Shailesh. No, I was fascinated listening to Patrick's account. Mine is a very prosaic thing about how India is moving in the world today and what it can do to the world. But I'll try and link up international politics with what Patrick has given us a base to build upon. Because I think ultimately we should see the two as linked. We should see the world in more holistic terms rather than narrow compartmental and mechanistic Cartesian world, which is I'm very uncomfortable with. Now, very quickly, we had in the world after Second World War, to give a bit of recent history, the so-called Cold War, which lasted till 1990, 1991, when the Soviet Union dissolved itself and imploded, and that was the end of it. Then became what we know as America's, USA's, and I must be careful to use the word America because Patrick is from Canada, but globally, USA is known as America, so I'm using it in that sense. And America became the sole superpower, the sole hegemon, the unipolar moment. But we didn't last very long. Hubris set in very quickly. They thought they owned the world, and they made one mistake after the other because the world revolved around themselves. Even some people with good intentions. I'm not condemning them. No, outstanding people there. Absolutely. I've lived in that country. I'm very fond of that country. But when hubris builds in, you don't see things, and therefore you make mistakes. Now, China has decided after 2008-9 that the West is in decline, complete decline, China and partly Russia. And now they've taken on the US very strongly on all fronts. Some people even think that they have won the second Cold War without firing a bullet. I don't agree with that, but I leave it aside. How do I link that to history and our culture? What is happening now? One, of course, is if you travel around the world, if you go to Southeast Asia, obviously, the Indian influence has been very, very strong historically. Even when the Muslim Sultan of Yogyakarta, Central Java, in the 1850s made a new palace, right in the center of it, he put a statue of Ganesha, as they call it. Today is Ganesh Chaturthi in any case, as a remover of obstacles, Vigneshwar, So the but what we don't understand is that Indian influence was there a lot of places. If you read the Pali canons very carefully and the birth of Buddha and see the New Testament account of it, there's a lot of similarity, except that the Pali canons are much older. And therefore, there's enough proof that there was a settlement of Indian monks and traders in Alexandria. So you can see Indian influence in different ways. The fire temple in Azerbaijan, Armenia, parts of even central Russia, Indian influence was there. Buryata on the top. But the difference between the Indian influence and the others has been bullets were not used, swords were not used. Trade was used, not consciously. You traded because you wanted to buy something and sell something, which is a natural human tendency. Trading is a very natural human tendency to do. We work and get a wage. We are trading our labor to get a salary. And through ideas. The ideas spread so extensively all over. And as I said, none of this needed military might. Thank God for that. Thank God for that. Even today, we did not want to choose sides, whether it was the First Cold War or even the America-China clash. We were obviously more comfortable with the American point of view. So freedom and open choice is something we value very greatly. And the Chinese system did, but we realized that China is a big country next to us. We must work with China. But now we are being forced into a corner, which I feel uncomfortable with. but which is inevitable, so we should not bother about that. But India will choose an open society where ideas can flourish, where ideas can be contested. That will always prioritize over everything else. Many schools of philosophy in India, like Charvaka, died completely, but we know about them. Why? Because their opponents, in writing a refutation, first cited the other party's case and then refuted it. So we always give respect to a different point of view. We do not believe there is only one path to salvation. And that is the competition of ideas. So that's why Indian ideas could spread easily and could be diffused, and yet didn't need an army to do so. But I think, and what is holding us back today, part of it Patrick has already mentioned, is the fact that, one, thanks to recent history, we did become suspicious of the world. We felt that the world was out to exploit us. We were not wrong, but we lost that self-confidence to take on the world as a society. As an individual, yes, individuals go out and do very well, but as a society, we were put on the defensive. And that is something we have to work it out. Unfortunately, our education system also did not help us create that critical thinking in us, which enables us to look at ourselves better, to understand ourselves better, our strengths and our weaknesses better, and then see what is it that we need from our history and our culture and the traditions, and what is it now that we don't need. It was contextual, maybe it was plain wrong. We were not gods after all, we made mistakes, accept them, remove them. But that ability in our education system hopefully will now come back, because critical thinking and curiosity is at the core of all education. Curiosity is a strength. Experience is a fantastic teacher. So the use of ideas. We have to move on this direction, but let us be clear. While on one hand, India's rise is not threatening even today, we neither have something like the Belt Road Initiative, where we trap countries into debts which they can't pay back and then lose their sovereignty partly, nor are using our armed forces to grab other people's territories, nor are we seeking to bully Taiwan as an example, or China is doing, or Hong Kong what it is doing, or Senkaku, Japan what it is doing. We are not in any of the above. It is non-threatening in that sense. India has tremendous strengths. Our youth, a large number, we have the largest youth population in the world. Youth is our strength. They're eager to learn. And generally, and one good thing about whatever our social consciousness has been, is we have a general positive attitude towards life. I heard a story years ago that if you throw an Indian into a ditch, he looks up and sees the stars. He doesn't complain about the ditch. In other words, it was meant as a sarcasm that you guys are fatalistic. I see it as a positive sign. If you have that attitude, I'm seeing the stars, I want to go there. You will make that extra effort to go there. Julius Nyerere, the famous African leader, had come to Delhi once when he was not in office. And early morning was getting bored in his hotel room, took a taxi, went Janpat. And so people having bath on the streets, something we are ashamed of, but they were smiling and laughing. And he says, this is what makes India different. You guys are having a bath on the streets, you're sleeping on the streets, and yet you're smiling and laughing. That is a tremendously positive attitude to have. And that, I think, comes from the balance between the individual and society. We are neither completely individualistic, everything for myself, I. So let's just give us an example, something for me, but the others for everybody else. I want the world's happiness. So, society is much bigger than all of us. We accept that. And yet we value individual opinion. So we try to strike a balance between the individual and society. We do not seek one. Socialism's, I'll kill 20 million people to serve society's needs. That will never happen. We cannot accept that ever. And also, I think we do not see a contradiction between dharam and earth. Cautilya says, to make money, first be a good human being. Because dharam comes first, then you will get earth. We never see making money as bad. You have different ways to do so. Dharma is very important, you must follow them, but you also need the material wealth. So we know that the balance is required with spiritual needs and material need. I can't tell a hungry man to meditate on God or meditate on life. Please, let's be real. So I think this ability to balance the two, and I'll end by saying, but none of it is a given. If India has to really emerge and take its place and be among the top countries in the world, which because of sheer size it deserves to be, if nothing else. Of course, there's so many other factors, but I'm really seeking size. And Savajkar has done amazing work. I'm glad Patrick cited him. Amazing work to tell us about our history. but it's not a given. We have to work for it. Atmanirbhar is a state of mind. It's not that you don't want to have dealings with the world. No, not at all. But it's a state of mind which says I shall not be unduly reliant on somebody else who can tomorrow blackmail me. I will not allow that sense to happen. And therefore, I have the self-confidence that I can cope up. That is more important, the need for self-confidence. And that self-confidence comes ultimately from within you, from examining ourselves, examining our 5,000 years of history, examining the richness of our culture, and telling us finally that do not accept any answer from anybody. Test it out. Test it out. Be curious, get the experience, and you will build a stronger India which can emerge, an India based on its history and culture, but an India comfortable with today and prepared for tomorrow. Thank you.
It is such a delight. It is always a delight listening to Shakti ji, because he has, he puts on all the aspects so prominently, from the materialistic aspect to the spiritual aspect, and then also leading on the very crucial aspect that it is important for a lot of young people today who are listening to us, that the Atmanirbharta is a state of mind. And it is not something related that we are going to close our borders for the international countries. It is about our state of mind of being self-reliant, of being self-confident, and that can come only from within us. And then he's also talked about how about the individual and the societal aspect that is important for us, and how society is greater than an individual here. And that is being taught back at every homes and in every household in India, I think. And having a smile is a crucial, be it whatever we are doing, be it even as Shakti ji shared, be it even taking a bath in the streets. And that's what spirituality, and that is what culture is there within us, to be happy, to enjoy whatever with the minimal that we have. Now, we would request Patrick to share his further thoughts on the same. And then,
well, I'll just continue. I mean, that was such a brilliant short lecture, Shakti, and I obviously have so much to learn from you. Yeah, one of the things that in the West we have no connection with is the concept of Brahma and Aham Brahmasmi. And so when you watch little things that happen in Indian society, like driving, when you find a mad intersection, when you've got cars moving all the direction, I often sit there and film intersections just to get to understand what's happening, because we couldn't possibly do that. We have an intersection of two lanes moving and in North America, and we're bumping into each other all the time. But in India, there seems to be a connection to each other that doesn't seem to be present in really any other cultures. And I have a feeling that it relates to the understanding that comes from early on and in the DNA that we are all connected. And and that's something that's important, not only for driving so that you can stay alive, but when you're in the streets and looking at Indian people that might take a bath there's a connection and an intimacy that you don't find in North America. We might be very clean on the outside, and it's very tidy and organized, but you can go through some very beautiful neighborhoods and find some very dirty people on the inside. And in India, what's so breathtaking is to see that sweetness that still exists, and the smiles, and that's from people. Often it's in the it's in classes that maybe don't have as much, but they celebrate the beauty of simplicity. But I've found that that the most important lesson that we can find about this subject is that there is an interconnectedness. There's an awakening now that's taking place in business, for example, with Just Capital in New York City, is that you can't possibly do well in a transaction unless the person on the other side of the table is also doing well. That there's an understanding that I'm having a conversation right now with myself. Even though you both are in Delhi and
Mhm.
I'm in Canada, there's an understanding that there's a mutual connection.
Tell us more about your South India or the ashram in the Himalayan foothills. That sounds very
You want
interesting.
to you want to talk more about that?
Yes, I mean,
Yeah, that would be really fascinating.
thank
No,
you so
tell it.
much.
Well, then my first introduction into temples in the South was your audience will get a kick out of it. Is I went to a you're familiar with Jyotish and astrology.
Mhm, mhm.
The Nadis are a very ancient and very small sect within Jyotish, and the story is that a great seer thousands of years ago knew all of the lives that would come for to have the leaf
Mhm.
read and to have the
Mhm.
astrology told, and wrote all of those down in some trance. And I don't know, and I bet there are some great astrologers in India that can really explain it better, but I walked in and sat for 2 hours while they looked. They take a thumbprint and then they are able to identify through the other palms, your particular leaf, and they go through a different. You might be a Patrick, but it's not the right Patrick, and it takes quite a while for them to find it out. And then they deliver a story to you about your current life. Your mother, your father, the names. If you're married, your wife's name and your children and how many you have, and so I learned that I have a connection to Karnataka and Kerala on the west coast of India, and so that was a really breathtaking experience. And I've since had other nadis read pretty much the same story. And so I have that connection to India. And so I remember an old teacher told me before ever going to India, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And that's people's reaction, the noise, the smells, it's just so
So much of it.
it's
So
so
much
powerful.
of it.
So yeah, when I landed in India, I knew it was my home. And so I obviously reincarnated on the west coast of Canada, and I don't know whether I got confused because they speak Canada in southern part of India. My last name is Brauckmann, so it might have been confused with Brahman. But I don't know anything. I know that I've got a profound connection, and I have for a long time with India. And yeah, in the north, I've been to Jageshwar, as far north,
Oh.
As that, and so I never do the tours. I don't know much about India on that level, but it's trying to remain as quiet as possible, removing myself. I go into Kerala every couple of years for panchakarma to stay clean, and so yeah.
I mean, I am simply enjoying the conversation between both of you. I mean, and Patrick, you've absolutely said it right. The names and the place that we stay has a lot of connection. Say, supposedly, 2 years back, I realized that there's a connection in the place that I come from, Shiliguri, and my name as well, which is Shailesh. So Shailesh itself comes from two words, which is Shel plus Ishwar. So, which is the king of mountains. And then
Right.
Shiliguri itself means that it is surrounded by stones. Shila is stone, and is surrounded by stones. So it gives so much of resemblance, and I felt so awestruck that wow, this is something amazing. I mean, I didn't realize that could have happened.
What's interesting is that I'm always amazed that the two of you, for example, who are light years ahead of me in the understanding of Dharma, are so interested in my story. I'm a beginner. I've been studying the Vedas for a long time, but I know mantras and I know techniques and so on. But it's in you so much more profoundly because it surrounds you all of the time. But I love that you're interested in this story, and I think that one of the things that I'm realizing is that there is a real hunger in India, in both the youth and all ages, to really get a better understanding of these secrets, and because it has been suppressed, Dharma has been suppressed. It was made to be odd, and all of the different the festivals and lack of understanding of every level. Shakti, you should tell what you think about this.
I agree. No, unfortunately, what has happened is, the word religion has no resonance in India at all. We do not understand the concept of religion. It's a very Abrahamic concept which arose in the West Middle East, and it has been given to us. In our system of beliefs, as you know, we do not have rigid bifurcations. In the same house, you can be a worshipper, a Shaivite, or somebody can be a Vaishnava. They're not things. And then we have what I call non-denominational gods. Ganesh, Saraswati. I mean, if I have to pray for knowledge, I pray to Saraswati, irrespective whether I'm a Vaishnava or a Shaiva or a non-believer. In that sense, once you put the bracket of religion and you reduce the Hindu thought, Hindu traditions, the word Hinduism to a religion, then you're forcing it into a kind of a box which is difficult to fit in. It doesn't fit into it. And therefore, you have the crisis of modernity, which is clashing with it. If we remove that, and which is why, fortunately, I come from a stream which says that your personal beliefs or lack of belief is completely irrelevant to me. You're free. You're free to believe, go to the church, the temple, the mosque, the Gurdwara, what is it, or not to believe. That is entirely an individual choice. So while we have society as a strong force, we also strongly accept that the individual has complete agency or what he or she wants to believe it or not. That is different from my life as a citizen. As a member of society, I must contribute for the social good. And these two are not contradictory. We do not see any contradiction between the individual and the society. Neither are we prioritizing the individual over society, which is something I find very difficult because that makes you very, very, what should I say, atomistic. It completely isolates you. It doesn't enable you to reach out to people. You'll never smile at a stranger because your mind is transactional. What am I getting out of it? You, on the other hand, you don't become a faceless person like unfortunately what the Chinese have done or what the Russians have done. You do not become faceless. You have agency. So I think this balance between the two is something we must strive to achieve. We have lost it, you're right. And we have been made to feel embarrassed about our identities, which is what makes me very angry. As I said, remove this Western Abrahamic concept of a religion, be happy with what you are, accept that we have made mistakes. Of course, we have made mistakes. If you don't accept that, we are in trouble. Accept that certain things which you practice were wrong. Maybe it was contextual at the time, maybe it was not even contextual, it was just a small group of elite forcing itself on. Accept that, remove it, move on with life, because we have to get on with life. And to me, my past, as I said when I closed, my past has relevance only if it helps me live my life today. Yoga is about living life, not withdrawing from life. Meditation is about facing life with both hands, not about withdrawing. We are not withdrawing. And therefore, the best meditator can meditate in a crowded marketplace, in a bus, in office, anywhere. Because it's about life. It's not running away from life. We are not. So that is something that we have been told that to be a religious person in India, to be a spiritual person is running away. No, you're not running away. You are very much in society. So that is the kind of thing I wanted to bring to the table.
That is
the filmmakers that created Star Wars, for example, appropriated many of the secrets of the Dharma. And I'm sure many of your viewers will know this, but the force that they refer to in Star Wars is prana. It's that Shakti. They appropriated these terms, but India wouldn't have been given credit for any of that. And this is what's important for Indians to understand, is that Sanatana Dharma is the most powerful force, the most powerful lifestyle. Those secrets, the individual secrets within them have strategies for every walk of life, whether it's architecture, design, whether it's for creating the body temple in Ayurveda, and mantra, to create form. There's so many amazing truths that the world has extracted. And if you look at the face of the great teachers abroad, they're often teaching Hinduism. India, yoga in North America and Europe is massive, but it's not so prominent. Baba Ramdev is creating a bigger movement now around
absolutely.
asana, but it's asana is only a very small part. Yoga, it's a very small part of of Hinduism, but it can be very powerful. But it was appropriated, and no real recognition was given for that. And individual teachers abroad, they took these truths and repackaged them in some other way. All of the great authors in North America, the big ones on the self-help, are all using yogic techniques. Lord Buddha himself was a Hindu. He obviously wouldn't call himself a Buddhist or wouldn't call himself a Hindu, but the strategies that he used on his path to enlightenment were all of the strategies that are taught in the Vedas, all of them.
Correct, and that is so true. I mean, I think even with the young people today, being a yogi and being a yogini is like a new cool for all of us. Thinking, and it is very nice to see how post 2014, I mean, since we adopted International Yoga Day, I mean, the United Nations adopted International Yoga Day, the very essence and the culture has been amplified and echoed across the globe now. And while we celebrate, Ganesh Chaturthi today, I realized there was this very strong image that was circulating across social media as well. That how Ganesha was present in different forms and ways in different parts of the world, maybe Japan or Indonesia, Afghanistan, and then Mexico as well. In different forms, the images of Lord Ganesha has been there from the 12th century or maybe the 13th century or the 14th century. And I think India, somehow the cultures have been connected across the globe for a long time now. And while last year, I mean, as Shakti ji was telling about how Chanakya has mentioned that Artha and the self within us, we need to have a balance, right? So, and then while I was there in United Nations last year, I had the chance to present something which is right there in the village. I mean, that this is a Kullhar glass.
I remember that talk, yes.
So I'm such an advocate about this glass. I'm also for a matter of fact that this comes from the marginalized people in the village. I mean, it is not being developed in the MNC or it is not being developed in the urban sites. It is being developed in the rural parts of the country. And that is exactly where the sustainable practices are also coming. And it is now being emerged globally. And I say that this, this glass which is made, it is made out of mitti of India. I mean, the soil of India. And as we say that the Panch Tattva, I mean, as Shakti ji and Patrick both were mentioning about the balance, the 5 tattvas that we are made of, we eventually go back to one of them is the soil. So this nation has had great teachers. I mean, someone whom I admire is one of them, Swami Vivekananda. And I am sure a lot of other great rishis, great leaders that have been born and then through the Panch Tattva have gone back to the soil. And this is made out of those particles are this which are carried in this mud. And it is sure that, this nation is always going to emerge globally. But then there's something that is coming up for Shakti ji on our chat box. Shakti ji, you mentioned about the Chanakya's Artha and the self within us. So how do you see, I mean, you have experiences over decades in the earlier different governments as well.
Too long.
So how do you see India has been emerging globally, not just in the cultural front, but also on an overall aspect?
Yeah. Absolutely. India has been fortunate to act together. But in the last 25, 30 years, we have made substantial progress in that. It's a very long journey. We were, of course, as Patrick pointed out at the beginning, along with China, the 2 greatest economies of the world till just 200 years ago, 220, 30 years ago. So we're really big, we were. Right? We were left on our feet, flat. But also, please remember that in the first 45 years of independent India, our economy as the global economy actually shrank, did not increase. It started changing only after 1991-92, that slowly we started. Today, we have reached the stage of what we were in 47. So, we have a long way to go. We have a really long way to go. And that is a challenge, as I said, which is upon the youth of today to really take on the challenge. But because of our technological strengths, economy, and the fact that the Indian communities who have gone out by and large have been seen as productive. If you go to the West, and I remember living in the US, so nice to come to immigration And this was just after Y2K. People of your generation won't even know what Y2K was. But in the year 1999, the world came to a panic because they say all our computers are geared for 00. So after 99, what happens? It doesn't become 2000, it becomes 00. And Indians actually solved the global problem, or solving the Y2K as it was called, Suddenly India was seen as a productive force, a force you can engage with, and largely non-threatening. We don't preach. We don't tell people how to live their lives. See, people like Patrick have come on their own. They've been driven by themselves. We are not in the business. Individual teachers may go around here and there, but we are not in the business of selling models. We have a model, you have a model. I respect your model. I'm not saying a model is wrong. Your model suits you.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. So we were seen as people who were not in the business of changing the world, upsetting the world, but contributing positively to it. And that has been growing. Today, I'll give a specific example, removed from theories. Saudi Arabia, for all these years, including the war with Pakistan, 99 atomic explosion, and later on, always on Pakistan's side, is today so engaged with India that it has effectively said no to Pakistan, after actually having paid for Pakistan's nuclear program to begin with. So this ability of the present government to really engage with countries like Saudi Arabia, with the Emirates, is so much greater. Where does the religion come into it? Religion does come into it. They are completely the keeper of the two shrines, the king of Saudi Arabia. So, that is why India is seen much more positively. There are negative stories a lot going because people don't like this change. People are upset about the change. And some mistakes have been made by us, to be fair. But that doesn't mean you can condemn us. You should be able, and we should not feel what should I say, depressed by it, but see it as a challenge that has to be overcome, because your growth will make a lot of people who benefit from the status quo uncomfortable, and they will make life difficult. Therefore, as I said, Atmanirbhar is a state of mind. You must understand it and work towards your strengths and to reduce the negativity that surrounds what happens.
We've got, looking at realistically, and I enjoy, the theater of politics. The current government has only been in place for 5.5 years. India is a 70-year-old nation. It's a tiny, amount of time, getting itself normalized from the ravages of colonialism. But this current government has only had a chance for 5 years to restore it and resuscitate, the damage that was done before. And no question, I'm sure there's many mistakes that have been made, along that way. The path that's, being charted out seems to be, strong, at least on an international level.
Right.
No one's seen India have the presence that it does now. That hasn't happened, ever. The way that eloquently you speak of that is that Hinduism, in India's truths, were shared with the planet in a way that no other culture was able to share it. When you see colonialism, when you see Islam, they've expanded Christianity around the world with force. And Hinduism and Hindus have never practiced that form of imperialism. Yet the Dharma, for some reason, seems to be, a global phenomenon all over the planet. If you look at the temple structures alone in India, from Afghanistan all the way into South East Asia, there's temples, and you're speaking in throughout Europe. We're finding them in Japan. This was a culture that was so vast and so strong, but it did it without firing a shot. That's something that that's new history that's being written has to talk about. Why is Dharma so powerful? And it was partially trade, because Indians Bharat were mariners and great traders. But the Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, is such a beautiful lifestyle, such a beautiful religion. People naturally, took to it.
Gravitate.
Patrick,
Exactly.
There's something that has come up on a direct message to us. Patrick, would you mind sharing what are some of these practices that you are, taking up on the, on the Hinduism or the Sanatana Dharma. Some of them.
So, yeah, I always get amazed that I'm being asked, by somebody in India for these. It just,
no, it's coming. Yeah.
No, but you'd be surprised how little many of us know. So it's so wonderful to listen. That's why you're interested in understanding.
Right. I think I'll learn a lot more from the two of you by the sounds of it. Very simple. The most important, there's so many, but to start off with, if you're building this temple here, make sure that your communication pathways are able to receive information properly through your eyes, through your ears, through your nose, and energetically. So keeping yourself clean through food is very important. Much easier in India, but the West has had influences where you've got dirty food and a lot of processed food. So keeping it natural. I'm vegetarian and have been for a long time. 2 or 3 of my kids, I think, are vegan. They're radical on that level, but I don't personally take dairy because dairy in North America is very unclean and it's not sattvic. There's a lot of suffering that's associated with dairy here because it's industrial and massive. And, at least in India, through Ayurvedic practices, you can still get good dairy, and family farms have been very positive to be able to keep dairy nice. So, that on a food level, it's important. And most important, to start off the day and throughout the day, if you can, is to learn, simple breathing techniques and pranayama. Far more important from my perspective than meditation and other forms of bhakti. But learning the breathing techniques on simple nadi shodhana, alternate nostril breathing, is probably number one, or even just being in harmony and being conscious of your breath and taking in just simple breaths of, a count of 5 breaths, Om 1, Om 2, Om 3, Om 4, Om 5, and then hold it. If you can get up to 6 or 7 or 8, hold it for 8 and then expel that breath, maybe in a 16 count, but just being aware of your breath, number one. So those are my morning. I do shat karmas, so I do a cleansing. So I'll clean my eyes and cleanse my nose with a nadi. So I'll inhale, I'll take in some saline solution, salt water, and I'll expel that. And then I'll jump in the lake or the shower to clean myself. And then I'll do asana, and then my breathing techniques, and then I'll do mantra meditations. And the mantras, the first, I remember when I met Deepak Chopra, I listened, I was reading his books when I was very young on Ayurveda, and he was a disciple of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and learned a lot of the Ayurvedic knowledge from India, brought it to the West, and changed a little bit of it and taught a lot of that. And I started reading that, and I went to a lecture down in Seattle, and then he invited me to come and learn meditation with him. And they were the transcendental meditation movement was where he came from, and they use a bija mantra. So it might be Om, Hom, Nama, and that was the very simple strategy. And so there are moon padas, moon mantras that they were teaching, and so I got a mantra through there. It turns out that a lot of the mantras that they were getting are from Vamadeva Shastri or David Frawley, and Vamadeva was assisting them early on in formulating their mantras. And so from there, I've learned different Shakti tantric mantras, some from the Vedas, and I have different relationships, and I'll use those mantras at different times. And so I wear malas, and I connect. I have a pearl mantra for to connect to the feminine divine at times, and I'm less connected in form than you guys would be in India, because I wasn't surrounded by the culture. I've had to do this a lot on my own and felt, very alone at times. And so I gravitate by learning from individuals. And I have no guru. Although I, would consider David Frawley, for example, one of my great teachers, and his wife, Yogini Shambhavi. They've been divine for me and introduced me to many great gurus in India. And I'm, obviously talking to two right now as well. I think that that's another really important secret. I've never cut myself off from learning something from anyone. Just because they're a holy man or, whatever. And I found some of the Shankracharyas in India, I'm not so, sure about at times. And so I'm not convinced that just because you've got a title, it makes you, holier than thou. I found that some of the most profound, meetings that I've had are with, people just on the street in India. I've learned such beautiful truths. And so being open and having your nadis open. Pranayama, good food, asana, meditation, and then, just the awareness throughout the day and keeping that. And then I read. I'm constantly trying to learn, more. I'm dyslexic, so I learn, better when I'm in front of people and I can listen to them more. But so anyways, that's a long-winded answer to your to the question about, some of the strategies.
No, interesting.
Shakti,
See, you made two very good points. Just one sentence I want to make, Sharon, is that, when you say you learn from so many people, that's what I said. Experience, if you experience it yourself, if you're curious, that is a much better teacher, much better teacher. I mean, why does one do even breathing meditation? Basically to make us aware of your own self, to understand it so much better, So that is, people don't understand that you don't need to go to some very big guru. Of course, David Frawley is outstanding. I'm very, very reverential towards David Frawley, absolutely. But as an example, you can learn from anybody, the auto driver, anybody, you don't have to be in a formal setting.
The other thing that I learned early on was that when the Vedas started opening up to me, I had so many questions that I needed all of the answers, and an answer came to me is just to stop asking so many questions, and so the silence, the silence is where the truth resides. It's in between my questions and in between my thoughts that the creative force comes through. And so when we stop and sit in silence more often and asking those questions before we go into meditation or just before we go into breathing, those answers come to us. And so I spend a lot of time. I'm currently at my farm, which is on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, and I'm on a lake and in the forest. And so it's a lot quieter here. And so I tend to get more, information that way than when I'm surrounded by
bookshelf behind. Lovely bookshelves behind you.
Yeah.
Challenge your question, sorry.
I wanted to compliment for both of your bookshelf that I could see right behind. I know it is said that great teachers would have a good bookshelf, and I'm so.
I can't read very well, but I'm surrounded by books.
I'm so overwhelmed, just like that I'm in the cloud of love or maybe cloud of something. I'm just enjoying the conversation that is coming up, and so a lot of our young people are doing as well. But then these conversations can keep on going on, and this is something that we can't stop. Once it just keeps flowing. Also about it, I think what was very essential in the today's discussion among all of us, I mean, especially between both of you, was that it is important to strike a good balance between the spiritual world and the material world.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
That is
absolutely
amazing. I mean, I think for a lot of young people today, including myself, it is a right message that spirituality is not about getting away from life, but it is about being in the life.
Absolutely.
I'm so enjoying it. And a lot of our young people are doing as well. And I think the last with which Patrick just mentioned, silence is the answer. And I don't know how well we would be able to understand at this early stage, but then I'm sure slowly and gradually all our young viewers, once we move into this entire silence, there will be a lot of things opening up. And this silence, I think, has been also been one of the reasons that we have been developing cross-sectional and across the sections, on not just on the cultural fronts, but also on the artha front, which Chanakya and then Shakti ji mentioned. And I'm sure in the times to come, again, the resurgence and the reawakening of India would happen in the same way. And such experienced people, I mean, including Shakti ji and Patrick, on different fronts, and on one on the materialist understanding how India has contributed back in the past few decades, and how India is going to emerge globally. And there's so much to learn more from Shakti ji. And then again from Patrick on how the Hinduism's scientific and cross-sectional values and has to be understood and has to be adopted in our daily lives. Just one question for both of you, Shakti ji, and then to over to Patrick. Shakti ji, what is your message to young people of India today? What is your message to youth of India today?
Very simple. Be curious, be very curious, work hard, work really hard, but work with a purpose. Like physical labor is important, I agree, but this is an example of when I say that work with a purpose. If I take a shovel and try to shovel earth, I may work 8 hours and remove this much. If I bring a big machine and do it in 30 seconds. So it's not just hard working is by itself is important. Hard working with a purpose is very important. And to take advantage of silence, you must also first read, listen. Listening is very important. Talking is not so important. Listening is far more difficult, but far more important. And refuse to accept as truth anything. Find out. Never be satisfied. So when I say never be satisfied, it's not a negative statement. I'm saying that blame people. No, not being satisfied means wanting always to know more, to know better, so that as a human being, we can grow. India will come separately. First, you must grow as a good human being. Then you can contribute to your society so much better.
Right. So true.
Seek those who are searching for the truth and run from those who have found it.
Love it.
Always. Yeah, I love what you said though, Shakti. It's so important. Being curious is the most powerful force, that we have, and and keeping that awareness and that openness available, but having the plan, is also very important as well. Seeking wealth and material prosperity is nothing that we should be shy about if that's something that you care about. I'm an active guy. I've had lots of sports cars and beautiful home and all of that kind of stuff. But the material wealth that I once was searching for often brought a lot of unhappiness and just kind of apathy. And so I was able to learn that there's a lot more to it than in terms of wealth creation than the gratification. And so this is something that India will need to know very clearly, because there is we all have the selfish gene and we want more. But there's a purpose for prosperity, and there's a purpose for material gratification and the creation of material wealth. And so when we can balance that on an environmental level, that we have to know that we cannot be doing anything now that isn't clearly in sync with Mother Nature. We have to know that if we're creating something, that we can't be hurting Mother Nature, because that's an extension of our body. The trees are an extension, they're part of our lungs, that the waters are part of our body fluids. We know this now. This is so clear. So everything is just absolutely firm that we have to be in sync with each other. We have to know that I cannot move ahead in life unless you're also moving ahead. It doesn't mean that I can make a little bit more than you can, in terms of dollar, but it means that you have to be prospering as well, but that the people in my community as well. And I think that the other strategy is that I don't have it where I am. You guys have it. You're able to stay connected. Is that the satsang that, you know, having these moments, I loved this when you asked me to join you, is that this is such an important conversation, and it should be happening constantly, is to stay connected with each other, to stay connected, to help each other, to remind each other of the truths. And, you know, you guys have temples all around you. Those are so important. Reclaiming the temples, building the temples, whatever. If you've got a spare rupee, you know, donate it to a group that's helping rebuild the temples. You know, Delhi, you know, I think there's only one that's over 150 years old or something. These are thousands of years old, and before they were all destroyed.
Right.
You know, I think there's 60,000 of them. Be part of that. You know, be part of something, you know, that you know, the new India is excited about. You know, there's so many things to talk about, but you know.
Yeah, I think being connected, I'll just end by adding a sentence, though my time is over, is that you must be connected with nature. Never, and this is why I'm upset with the Cartesian worldview. Never treat nature as something to be conquered. You do not control nature. You're a part of nature. Never forget that. So take from nature, but take it humbly, take it in a manner that is sustainable. You cannot rob it. We have borrowed nature from our successive generations. We have to give it to them in a good condition when we return it, you know.
Very true. I mean, very rightly mentioned. And once again, going back, it says, Mata Bhumi Putraham Prithviya, which says that between the nature of the mother earth and a person in itself, it is like a child and the mother. And it is very rightly said that we are borrowing it from nature. You know, we have to make sure that we conserve it. We can't exploit it. And there have been so much messages that we have had today. Maybe to stay curious, to never be satisfied. Yet satisfaction doesn't have to be materialistic, and it doesn't want materialism, right? And it is fantastic to learn from both of you. I mean, on this dialogue, I think a lot of us have benefited, and myself as well. And I'm sure there is so much that we would learn more from you in the future. So once again, thank you so much to Shaktiji and Patrick for being here with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
That was wonderful.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much, Shaktiji. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Shailesh.